like Kevin is really doing his best to try and keep it together. So is James, right? And I knew that. And then I tell them, and at this point, they have me like cornered and they keep talking at me. And there's four people surrounding me, and I'm in a corner. And I'm like, guys, right now, you keep talking at me, telling me you want to solve it and that you're my friend, but you have me surrounded in a corner and you haven't asked me a single question. And so I just draw the boundary there. And I was like, stop. And you can tell these are why we play the game. Because as tough as this was, I could tell, especially Kevin and James, I could tell they had nothing but good intentions for me because they didn't know and they weren't judging me. You could see the non-judgment in their eyes. Like white sausage and Brussels sprout, I think were incompetent. I think they had judged and they made up their mind about me and they were already judging me. So I don't care what they think, right? But you could tell like Kevin and James, who were like the main honchos at SuperStars, they cared. I could tell like they were, because the minute I said, you're not asking me questions, you know what Kevin did? He asked me a question. That's how I know he was listening, right? Brussels sprout was unable to do that. So when that happened, I looked over, and you guys are going to hear this. I tell Kevin, I appreciate you. Brussels sprout, you're woefully unequipped. This is what it is. Because guys, that's how you know someone's listening and someone cares. When you express your need, you say, I need you to get away from me and stop surrounding me, and I need you to ask me a question. And when I told them that, they instantly did it because they were holding all the tokens. They were holding all the attention. They were holding all the power. But the thing is, I was being assaulted and being held responsible. So I have no voice. I have no I am taking all the responsibility with no voice or attention on me. Right? That's called imperialism. That's called exploitation. That's called prejudice. But the thing is, Brussels sprout and white sausage were okay with that dynamic because they're brainwashed, right? And they're NPCs. And the reality is like, I'm not mad at them, but I don't respect them because they don't know how to think for themselves. Because when I literally said, I need you to ask questions, they were unable to do it because you can tell they don't know how to think. But then Kevin and James, you can tell this is why they're the leaders because they know how to think. They know how to question things. They know how to do an investigation. Now, while Brussels sprout was building her whole argument against me, she said that the bartender was one of the 5 witnesses who witnessed and said that I was sexually harassing this other person. And this is when I was able to detect by Brussels sprout telling the story to Kevin at this point. And if you listen to, I'm going to try and scrub the podcast, but at this point, it's when I'm able to identify Oklahoma for who she is. So I identify Oklahoma and I know who it is and I'm able to recall the circumstance. And I definitely didn't harass Oklahoma, right? But Brussels sprout is saying that and trying to tell Kevin that's a lie. And so I'm like, how do I get to the bottom of this? So eventually, because Kevin is far more equipped, far better leader, and obviously he needs to train Brussels sprout how to do her job or something like that. And this is where I was talking to SuperStars, like, hey, maybe you guys do a bit better. When Kevin did that, at this point, I decided, because he said he would listen to me, at this point I decided I wasn't going to sue. Right? So I'm not going to sue SuperStars. I'm not going to take it to court. I'm not going to, even though I have a huge compelling case and I know exactly how I'd make it. And if I wanted to, I'm pretty sure I could win. But I'm not going to do it because Kevin listened to me. Right? And I want to talk about that, guys, why listening is so important. So this is part 5 and the importance of listening. So Kevin Anderson, James as well was super awesome. He was really genuine. He asked me some questions. He was super respectful. My condemnation, so it's really, and you gotta understand, Brussels sprout and white sausage aren't malevolent creatures. They're not bad people. They're just incompetent. And the thing is, it's recognizing that I'm not going to take your incompetence as malevolence, but that doesn't change the pain it's causing. This is why it's important to be competent, guys. This is why it's important to know how to ask questions, to know how to think, and to know how to engage in civil discourse. But white sausage, Brussels sprout, you guys don't know how to do that. You're terrible at it. It's the proof's in the pudding. So you need to get better. If you truly want to get better, learn to ask questions, learn to listen. Simple as that. Ask questions, listen. You don't know how to do that? If you want to walk in, even if you say really, really, really nicely, if I tell you, hey, you're wrong, you're argumentative, you're contentious, when you've literally just been harassing me and you won't answer any of my questions, think about a kid being like that. Because when I was a kid, that would happen. Have you ever been with a kid where a parent is just telling you you're wrong and they won't tell you why you're wrong? They won't tell you what you did wrong, but they're just going to hold you responsible and get mad at you. It's abuse, guys, right? But now I'm a powerful adult who will not be abused. But when I was a kid, I grew up with teachers and stuff like that all the time. I'm going to tell you guys one time, there's a video I have that's coming out where basically I had a counselor tell me at 13 years old that being in foster care was my fault. And guys, this is what happens. Like, we're always told, like, especially like as minorities and like majority times, you're always told everything that happens is your fault. And now I don't believe in fault. I do believe in responsibility. It is my responsibility for how I handled that, right? Which is why I was taking responsibility. Because I take responsibility for everything that happened. It does not mean that it's my responsibility to make Oklahoma feel okay. And I do not care I care about how Oklahoma feels, but I'm not going to take responsibility for something that was not communicated to me, right? So at this point, I know that Oklahoma, when she went with Joe Dominguez's yellow assistant, they went behind my back and they complained to Brussels Sprout. And then Brussels Sprout and White Sausage, who had other complaints, came, right? And one of the 5 witnesses they had was the bartender, right? So she said she had 5 witnesses to her case. So I know that now. That's Oklahoma. I know that's the assistant. That's 2 people. And she said there was 5 separate incidences, which literally is impossible. Because I'm like, I haven't talked with 5 different people like that. And like, unless it's like and they're like, we've had multiple complaints. And I'm like, that's impossible. So at some point, there's a lie. There's a lie going on. And I know that. And we have to root out where the lie is. And until some people can start admitting what the lies are, this is not going to work, right? And that's one of the reasons, like, and this is where I don't blame Kevin, because Kevin was really going to do, and I gave him where he talked about SuperStars as an impact. So he goes and he buys me a drink. And at this point, I decided I'm not going to sue him. So we go and we talk for a little bit about what had happened. And he starts asking me about the game. He starts asking me questions, actually having a dialogue with me, actually listening to me. Something Brussels Sprout was incapable of doing because her mind is too dense. And I don't mean that in an insult. I literally mean the vibrations and her cognitive capacity and her level of awareness are not at the level to be doing the job she is doing. She's doing safety and security, which is a level 6 job. She's at a level 2. She's not able to do that. She's under-equipped for that. And so I don't blame her, though, because as a society, we're constantly putting people in jobs that they're not equipped to do, and then we're blaming them for their incompetence. This is what happens with police brutality, guys, because this is similar things. I'm really, really good with cops, and you need to understand when someone has a deadly weapon, I'm acting very, very different. I'm still recording it, but I'm not going to be acting out in outrage the way they are. But if a cop came knocking on my door and said, you're sexually harassing, I would just take it all the way to court, and I'd make sure everything was recorded, but I'd be nice with the cop, because that cop could kill me. And you could tell, like Brussels Sprout was like, I would take a bullet for you. Brussels Sprout is the type of person I would never let behind my back. She's the type of person I could see shooting me in the back. Like, I'll be honest, I don't trust you, Brussels Sprout, at all. Like, I wouldn't trust you as far as I could throw you, which is pretty far because you're small, but I wouldn't throw you and I wouldn't touch you. So it's not at all. I wouldn't trust you at all. So even though she says she's fair, and like James and Kevin feel that way, and I'm sure she does, and I'm sure with people who look, think, and act like her, white, pretty people, it's cool. But when I'm a big, aggressive black guy, whatever. So, but guys, this is what I deal with. This is what I deal with. So I'm telling that to Kevin, and he's listening, and he's hearing me. And we record, and I want you guys to hear his side of the story with SuperStars, because he really, guys, you could tell he really wanted to make me feel welcome and at home in his tribe. And the issue, and what's hilarious is as he's talking, I see Oklahoma talking to a black guy of all people. And I'm like, well, it wasn't discrimination. It's not about race there. It's just about Oklahoma being toxic. And I could see Oklahoma literally. So Kevin's right here, and I can see Oklahoma talking to this black guy in this booth behind her. And I tell Kevin, I'm like, the person who started all this is right there. And I don't point her out to him, and he's not interested in that, because he's Kevin, he's a stud, and he's not trying to create sides. But I'm like, I can see the person who lied. Now, how do I know they lied? Because first off, remember, so the lie was this. I was able to detect the lie. The lie was when I asked Oklahoma and the assistant, remember when they moved? They got up and they moved. So if you guys are hearing this was in part 2. So I want you to watch this full video so you understand how this all comes together. Oklahoma, right? I knew the lie was when I'd asked her, she'd felt uncomfortable, but there's something had been an issue. She said, no, they just needed time to talk. Well, what happened is right after done, they've been like, oh my God, I was get away from him. He's so rude. And they went and they gossiped and they talked shit. I don't know anything about Oklahoma, but I can tell you she's a gossiper and she's not a trustworthy person, just from that behavior. And people will be like, well, you can't generalize. Maybe she felt uncomfortable. It's like, no. But if that was her default when she feels stressed, that means when she's arguing with her husband, she feels stressed, she goes about and she talks about it to find someone's back. That means when she's frustrated with her kids, rather than knowing how to communicate with her kids, she probably goes and complains about her kids, if she has kids. Or when she's in her career, she doesn't know how to deal with something, she goes and she complains about it. Because that's a pattern. That's a pattern. And people will think, well, you can't generalize. I'm not generalizing. I'm being hyper-specific to Oklahoma. And I'm telling you, I've worked with clients, I've worked with people. It's human psychology. When people have emotional experiences, if they're unconscious, they're almost always going to do the same trigger. So literally from just that one behavior, I can tell you Oklahoma's emotional state. I can tell you the reason she did it. The emotional response was when I asked her if she had a happy marriage. This was the first lie. It was no. She's not happily married. But she didn't know how to communicate that. So she said yes. The guilt from that lie is what led to all this mess. That was the energy transference that happened. That's what created this. Now you could say, well, Onyie, if you hadn't asked the question, right? And it's true. If I didn't ask her if she was happily married, none of this would have happened, right? But remember, part of it is building connections and getting to know people. I wasn't trying to sleep with Oklahoma. I was trying to get to know her. And I found out she was married, so I said, her man's probably a lucky woman. Are you married? Because Oklahoma didn't seem happy, and I was wondering why she didn't seem so happy at the bar, because I was trying to connect, regardless of whether or not she's a woman. And I know that because literally Joe Dominguez heard the same question I asked him, and Joe and I were able to connect. But I'm saying this is the difference. This is the difference between someone who's able to take responsibility for their feelings and say and remember when Joe said, I'm married, Joe maybe he's not happily married, but I didn't dive into that with Joe, and I didn't push boundaries there. We talked and ended up talking about his son. But Oklahoma, who was unable to take responsibility for her feelings, who was obviously unaware of her feelings, toxic feminine, went around my back, gathered her group, and started to assemble an assault team behind my back to come get me. And that's materialized through Brussels sprout and white sausage. And then they said they'd had multiple eyewitnesses. So let me go back to my time with Kevin. Gina, the bartender's at the bar, and I asked Gina, I was like, hey, have you heard anything about this sexual harassment? They said, you eyewitness, and someone is using you and dropped your name and said that, they talked to you about sexually harassing, and then you said that, and she was like, I don't know what you're talking about. So remember Brussels sprouts said there was 5 witnesses? That means the bartender was one of them. We just knocked it down to 1. That was a lie too. That wasn't true. Because the bartender didn't say he was sexually harassing people. But Brussels sprout was using that as her argument and saying that we've had 5 people in 5 separate incidences tell that he's sexually harassing. We found out one of them was not true. We just talked and it was, or they're lying too, and they're lying to Kevin now. But now Kevin can witness it. So I'm talking, and he sees it, and he's like, oh, okay. But this is what I'm saying, guys. This is why if you play the game well, you start able to detect lies. You're just starting being like, this is not working. There's a lie here. There's something not true going on here. And then, we started talking about the nature of truth, and then we started talking about the slippery slope of truth. Because if someone feels uncomfortable and that therefore gives them license to lie, because to protect themselves, and then they create all this drama, then what you're doing is that can be weaponized. And I was like, but do you see the slippery slope? And when I mentioned Emmett Till, they're like, whoa, this is not Emmett Till. But guys, it's exactly like Emmett Till. Emmett Till, without thinking, complimented a nice white lady. That white lady got upset, the boy got killed. That's what happened. So if you want to look up the story of Emmett Till, and it was hilarious because you say, do you know Emmett Till? And Brussels sprout and white sausage had no idea because they're just in their, their cultural bubble of knowing nothing. You can tell that's why they're so NPC. They don't know how to think because they don't even know the basic history of another group of people who are living in this country, so they don't know how to communicate. And then they don't know how to ask questions, so they're not able to learn in that moment because they just think they know it all, right? And this is what I mean when I say imperialism. And this is what people talk about when they say white superiority, right? Brussels sprout and white sausage are examples of white superiority. Kevin J. Anderson and James A. Artemis Owen are examples of humanity. They're examples of people who are trying to build bridges. White sausage and Brussels sprout are just NPCs who are perpetuating an idea of division that was caused by a lie Oklahoma told. But Kevin and James are out to heal that. And these are the guys that are leading SuperStars. Now, they were unable to protect me in that one instance, and we were able to detect it, right? And now, I basically now have texted every single person that I talked to that day. I texted Gail, and she's like, absolutely not, I didn't say that. So now I know it's either Barbados. I talked to Barbados, and Barbados was like, no, I didn't say that. So now I'm like, there's literally nobody else I spoke to that day. So now I'm going to all my first day interactions. So I asked one person, I'm just going to call them the redhead, right? I sent the redhead message, and I haven't heard back from her, right? So she might have complained, right? So toppable things. But the thing is, when I was flirting with the redhead, it was in a very public setting, and the redhead had set it up and said it was okay. So if the redhead is going around saying that it's not okay and talking shit, she's setting stuff up. And there were multiple eyewitnesses and plenty of people who were like, oh, she's cute, and she was flirting back. And there's multiple eyewitnesses of that. So I don't know where the sexual harassment is coming from, guys. I legitimately don't. But we're going to get to the bottom of this. Who, what, when, where, why, when. Who, what, when, where, why, would. That's why these questions are so important in the game, because it literally allows you to detect lies. All right? And so we're going there. We know the bartender's not there. So 20% of her argument just evaporated into smoke. I know Oklahoma, at least, there's not 5 incidences. That's a lie. So when Marta, I got to delete that. When Brussels sprout said there was 5 incidences, that was a lie. Brussels sprout was lying to have a better argument with Kevin and James, so they would seem like they were more legitimized in their argument because it was me versus them. And I was trying to point that out. Be like, you're not here trying to build bridges. You're actually here trying to pretend, and you're trying to kill your enemy, and you're trying to be deceptive in how you're doing it, but I can see what you're doing. But you're not my friend, and I can tell that, right? But guys, how can you detect that? Because I'm asking questions she's not answering. She's speaking really softly. She's speaking really nice. She's a little like old little lady, Brussels sprout, so she seems like she'd be sweet. You guys gotta understand, the enemy, even the devil, will use any tool to hurt you. Even send people who look like angels. So this is wolf in sheep's clothing. And Brussels sprout was total wolf in sheep's clothing, and you could tell, because she was trying to weaponize the people around her, and it's toxic feminine all over. But she's just being a herald for Oklahoma, because this all started with Oklahoma, right? Who I could see. And I know exactly who Oklahoma is, and I know who the assistant was. So based upon some things, I'm going to show this video, and I talked to some people, and then I'm going to go speak to Joe Dominguez and speak to his assistant, and I'm going to record the whole thing, and we're going to see how this saga unfolds, right? But at that point, Kevin was starting to see through the cracks in the matrix of how someone's lie and their harassment was being weaponized against me. And he was able to see that. He was starting to see that because one of the eyewitnesses was done. And I already know who the other two. So if 5 is an actual number, which might be a lie, right? For the 5, for all I know, in her mind, the 5 might be white sausage and her and the bartender, which is a lie. We know that. And then these 2, that might be the 5 people, right? I don't know. But we're going to get down to the bottom of this. But that's what I'm saying, guys, is that like Brussels sprout is not my enemy, but Brussels sprout is not my ally. So I'm not going to trust Brussels sprout. So anyway, so I just think of, when I think of a Brussels sprout, I just think of it. But guys, this is what I'm talking about. And Kevin was there. And I'll say this, guys, like, SuperStars is not responsible for Oklahoma. I won't be coming back to SuperStars next year, but it's not because of Kevin J. Anderson, and it's not SuperStars' fault. People like Oklahoma are present. And this is where we talk about, hey, one person, I don't know. Let me not declare that. I might come back. I told Kevin if he could let me talk on the subject, I would consider it, right? But I'm not paying for a ticket to come back because ultimately, like, I don't feel welcome here, right? And I realize now it was because of Oklahoma, but I don't know who the other two witnesses and the other incidences are. And that might all be smoke. That might just be Brussels sprout lying to try and appeal more powerful than it really is. And she might have just made all that up. And if that's the case, then Brussels sprout is the problem, right? But it's recognizing that, like, part of building a tribe, guys, is we need to have honest, open dialogue. And it's not, and when you go within an in-group and you talk behind people's back, you can create a lot of drama. So I cared about SuperStars. So when I had issues with SuperStars, I went and I spoke to the head of SuperStars. And they were like, well, you're doing this. This was something that was interesting that James said. James said, like, well, aren't you doing the same thing, going back and suing us, like what she did to you? And I'm like, yeah, I am doing that. But the difference is I'm confronting you first. And I'm telling you what my issue is. And I'm trying to resolve the issue with you before I get litigation. Oklahoma lied, said there was no problem, and then sent litigation in the representation of Brussels sprout and white sausage towards me. That's not how you deal with communication. That's not how you build bridges. So Oklahoma, shame on you. Honestly, it was just not good. And I know exactly who you are. And I'm going to find a way that you will see this or someone you know will see this video. Shame on you. Shame on you. You created a lot of drama. You hurt me. And you're a liar. And it's not my fault. Whatever's going on in your marriage is happening. It's not my fault. You felt uncomfortable in that moment, right? I was respecting you, right? If I put clean water in a dirty glass, dirty water comes out. But that's not the water's fault. I was trying to get to know you and connect with you, just like I connected with Joe, just like I connected with Gina, just like I connected with Jeff, right? But you didn't want to connect, and that's fine. You don't have to connect. You can be uncomfortable and not connect. But when you go and you make that my fault and my problem, and then you lie about it when I ask you if you felt uncomfortable, when I can clearly see through your social cues that you feel uncomfortable, because I picked it up already. I had already known. That's why I stopped talking to you, right? But because even though you feel uncomfortable, and I know you feel uncomfortable, I recognize as a boundary, that's not my responsibility. And now I want to help you feel better, but if you don't want to receive that help, I'm not going to do anything about it. I have to respect your boundaries, which is what I was doing. And then you, Oklahoma, you went behind my back, you got the little assistant of Joe Dominguez, and you went and you weaponized SuperStars against me. And so because of that, I'm not coming back to SuperStars, because you were unable to take responsibility for your feelings, right? And I'm not accusing you. I'm saying that's what happened. Your feeling uncomfortable had nothing to do with me. You felt uncomfortable well before I got there. I simply illuminated it because I knew the right question to ask, because I can see people, right? And you don't want to be seen. That's okay. You don't need to be seen. But if you are having a marketing issue or you're trying to sell a book and you're like, oh, I want to be seen. No, you don't. You don't want to be seen, right? Because apparently when someone sees you or asks you what's really going on, you mentally lash out and you seek to destroy them. Why is any audience going to want to connect with that? And if you do have an audience and you are doing well, I feel bad for them that they let someone like you in their mind, because you're not equipped to be in anyone else's mind. You don't even like being in your own. And that's obvious. So, yeah, I don't have very high regard for Oklahoma. And I'm working on that. Guys, part of this club, this quest and this journey is learning how to love everyone. So you guys got to understand, I got to eventually, and I'm going to work through it and have love for Oklahoma. But just because I love Oklahoma and I want what's best for her doesn't mean that I'm okay or what she did was okay. And you might be like, well, Oni, like you maybe, and they kept saying, well, just be more sensitive, be more sensitive. I was sensitive and I stopped talking. I was sensitive and I asked her, is something wrong? I was sensitive enough, but then she lied and then went behind my back and gossiped. And that created all this drama. And now because of that, Kevin got a headache, James got a headache, everyone had a headache, right? And that was because of a lie. She just transferred her toxicity and just pushed it onto other people because she's unable to take responsibility. And Oklahoma, if you're offended by this, understand I have not used your real name. Nobody knows who you really are. Only you know this, if you're hearing this, but you know who you are. You know who you are. I sat next to you, and maybe Gina and Joe have figured out who you are. If they know who you are, I don't care. Then yeah, they need to know who you are. Because you lied. I'm not going to call you a liar, but you lied. And because of that lie, it created a lot of damage. And I don't know, if you're able to do this with someone who is authentic to you for 2 minutes, I can't imagine what authenticity does in your life. I can't imagine what it's like being married to you, having you as a mother. I imagine it's probably extremely painful for people to be around you because this is what you do. This is the result of what you do. And if you believe I don't have that power, you absolutely do. And I can say for certain, if I got you in an interview, I could learn and pull your life back. I could pull back the curtain, and I would see all this toxicity and disgusting drama, mental health issues. You're probably on pills. I could see so much of the issues you're having literally from talking with you for 2 minutes because of how you play the game. Right? That's how you play the game of life. You lie, you go around people's life, you don't want to be seen, you don't take responsibility. And that is hurting you and your ability to advance and get what you want. So, Oklahoma, if you need to hear this, this is the answer, right? And if you come so far and you're like, why did I come to SuperStars? I need to learn something. I need to change something about myself. Yeah, stop lying. Stop lying, right? And if you don't know how to be honest, learn how to be honest. That's what you need to do. I don't know what you're doing, but I can tell you're capped and you're feeling that pain. I know there's emotional pain in your life because people who don't have emotional pain don't do what you did. Healthy people don't do that, and you are not a healthy person, Oklahoma. You're not healthy. You're sick, and you need help, okay? So, guys, that's my message. It was a bit of a rant. I had to get that out there, but it was a really big video. I'm going to put it all out there. I'm going to do my best to edit out some of the parts and not slip anybody's name or whatever. I might not edit them out all the way, I'll be honest. Like, part of the reasons, like, if you cock to me and you need to be hit all the time, I do my best. But there's also a part of me that's like, if you're worried about the backlash of that, first off, if anybody tries to hurt these people, you're retarded. Just leave them alone, right? I'm just here to create communication. So if you get this person